Timing the sale of your company, actually 50% of the value of the sale of your company is timing. Think about that for a second. We've gone through extraordinary periods of time. Remember 2021? GameStop, $300 a share, $500 board apes, 1,000 SPACs came to market. What we've done here is we've put together a time to sell index is designed to help you figure out through empirical data when to make a decision to sell your company, to sell your startup. And that's what it's designed to do. And so we've come out with this index. It's something that we actually launch in our monthly newsletter. I actually call it a monthly publication. Mimi is the individual who helps us put this together with another gentleman named Kelsey. And what we include in this monthly newsletter is incredible. It's like a publication. It's tons of startup hacks from AI to in-depth conversations about certain topics. It's designed to help you run your startup, to help you become a better entrepreneur, because that's what this is all about. This is all about entrepreneurship and start, scale, exit, repeat, the book. It's all about sharpening that sword. It's all about becoming better and better at what you do. That entrepreneurship is a trade. It's a trade like any other trade. Today, we're talking about timing the sale of your company. But isn't it interesting, Michelle, before we jump into this, and if you're listening to some podcasts, you might not know this, but we do this on a live show on Clubhouse, on an app called Clubhouse. And yet we're still around. Clubhouse is still around. And you can join us every Friday at 2 o'clock Eastern. Michelle, it's been interesting to see a lot of changes on the app in the last few days. We got a message from Clubhouse last night at 5:30 telling us that they're working on promoting rooms again and that rooms are going to become the central focus. It looks like they may have made a big mistake when they went into this sort of asynchronous chat mode and promoting that and making that the default. It looks like now they've recognized that rooms are the key, that rooms are the things that can drive the conversation.
Oh my gosh.
What do you think, Michelle?
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, we here fortunate to run the large club on Clubhouse, but yeah, I'm surprised that it took so long, quite honestly, but I'm glad that they've realized that now and they're making the change because I think Clubhouse from the origin has really been about the rooms and the interaction and members of these clubs, not just individuals. So I'm
I'm
happy
happy
about it.
about it. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think that hopefully this is a renaissance for Clubhouse and it is truly an incredible app. It's truly an incredible community. The Startup Club is another incredible community. If you haven't already done so, join us at www.startup.club and sign up to that email list. Sign up to that monthly publication that would come out. We're working on the third version of it this week and next week, and it'll come out next week. And it's really every time we come out with this publication, all we're obsessed with is how we can help you succeed with your startup. How can we help you as a founder in these challenging times come up with hacks, come up with ideas, ways that we can help you succeed? And that's what we do. We also are now about 80,000 people on YouTube. If you're following that channel, that's a good little channel to follow. The one I'm probably more excited about right now is TikTok, where we have just started about a month ago, and we already have 600 followers on TikTok, and it's growing every day. We're adding 100 followers because I think we're really tapping into sort of a segment we haven't really done before, which is that 18 to 34-year-old aspiring entrepreneur. And that's something that we're tapping in there. All right. We're gonna get going here. And I do want to talk about the timing, the sale of your company. And in the last publication, the last report, the last email that went out, we talked about a TTSI, a time to sell index. And we're going to talk through that. Before we go into that, Michelle, I'm going to work on my microphone. If you could talk a little bit about your experience selling companies. And I know you got a big one you can talk about. I know this under NDA with GoDaddy, but if you could talk a little bit about that, that would be great. Now, give me a couple minutes to get my microphone working properly here.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Talk about time to sell and planning and really watching the market. The sale of .club domains definitely fits into that scenario. Just coming into COVID, we had been in discussions, deep into discussions, and it was hard, Colin, right? Because we really were experiencing a good amount of growth and knowing when to sell, right? It was very hard decision, but in the retrospective, I think we sold at the right time. It was the perfect time for us to sell. The sales were on the rise. We sold obviously to GoDaddy, who was our best distribution partner. It really was. I'm going to say it was a match made in heaven, Colin. So it took the process itself. I'm going to say it took, one could practically say it took a couple of years by the time the conversation first started. But once we really got into the details of the negotiation and the due diligence, for us, it went pretty quickly because we had been setting this up for some time. And like I said, we were on the rise in terms of revenue and registrations. Now, there was a lot of people, I'm just going to say, that were just like, oh, wow, why are you selling this now? You're doing so well. And the short answer is because we really felt that to take the domain extension to the business to the next level, it really needed that kind of infrastructure, that audience, customer base that somebody like a GoDaddy had. And they're doing it. Thoughts, Colin?
Yeah. So we look like geniuses, right? That's like when I was called into MIT to speak to a group of very successful entrepreneurs in 2012. And they asked me, how is it possible that you keep starting, scaling, exiting, repeating over and over again? And I don't think they quite used those words, but they did say, how is it possible you keep starting and exiting companies like so at the right time? And the genesis of this book comes from a story that I've told a few times. And if you've in the audience, you've heard the story, I apologize. But it's a story that really I think we all should listen to. It's a story of a 29-year-old, a story of someone who had immense success. He and his partners had had been in Profit magazine in 97, 98, the seventh fastest growing company in Canada, third fastest growing company in Canada. We were the top. We were leading the pack of growth companies in Canada. And in 2000, sorry, 1999, we decided to merge our company with a cable company. We were publicly traded at the time, so it was a bit of a weird transaction. But our shareholders received 40% of the transaction, and 60% went to the new shareholders. So we were no longer in control. I was not CEO of the company. I had to step back and be vice president of the internet division, and I reported to the CEO of that company. Something happened. First of all, actually, the good news happened in 1999. We were awarded a license, and this license in Canada propelled the stock to over almost $19 a share, and actually hit $19. And Sharon, we hit a valuation of well over $1 billion. It was a billion four, billion five. I can't remember the exact number in Canadian dollars. Okay, so over $1 billion US. And I owned 13% of this company at the time. And so here I am, a young kid, didn't know what I was doing, spent 10 years building this company and 10 weeks selling it. And fast forward to March of 2000 when a judge announced the breakup of Microsoft. See, we're doing a $50 million raise at this time. And when we were raising the money, we needed additional money for working capital, whatever it is. But the NASDAQ fell from 5,000 to 4,000. If you know anything about that time, the NASDAQ went all the way down to 1,200. That's right. And we thought, oh, we'll just We'll just reapply for more funds from the market when the market turns around. But it took 15 years for the market to turn around. Fast forward 15 months later, the company filed for bankruptcy protection, and I ended up selling my shares for 6 cents a share. There were 12 employees who were paper millionaires. They all lost their valuations in this transaction as well. And to this day, I feel guilty. I feel very bad for them. I feel bad for the investors. I feel bad for how we built a very successful publicly traded company and then we messed it up through this transaction. And there are two lessons I learned about that, Michelle. One was liquidity or control. We talk about that in the book. When you're going to exit your company, you want liquidity or control. But the second and probably the most poignant thing that we learned was that bad things do happen. And that losing 130 million at the age of 29, it changed my DNA. It changed my DNA as an entrepreneur. I began to think very differently. I began to think around cycles, building companies during periods of time, and then when things look too good, exit stage left. Let's talk a little bit about that, Michelle. Let's talk a little bit about that. But I do want to finish the story with, thankfully, I looked at that experience and was able to focus on building a new internet company, which by the way, in 2005 was the number one fastest growing company in Canada. So we hit number one. In 2006, we took the company public. In 2008, we sold it to a Fortune 500 company for 17 times EBITDA. It was a huge multiple, a huge success, and all of our shareholders benefited from it tremendously. But I'll tell you this, it's ironic. We closed that transaction 30 days before the Lehman crisis, right? The transaction that Michelle's talking about with Dot Club closed 6 months before the tech wreck in 2022. Do you remember 2021, Michelle? Do you remember the signs that we saw? We're going to talk anecdotally here a little bit. We do have an empirical metric that we've developed at Startup Club called the Time to Sell Index, which is something that we're going to publish on every quarter. It'll be updated every quarter. I can give you an update later as to how the methodology behind that, but also where we're at with the Time to Sell Index when it comes to the markets. And right now, we're basing it on IPO data, and we're looking at adding additional data sources to this metric. But right now, it's based on IPO data. Michelle, do you remember 2020? What do you remember about 2020?
All right, now COVID, right? We were about in tech, and we had a tech bubble, right? We were seeing record levels of VCs for tech companies, Colin, and a high IPO level.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, there are a lot of IPOs. There were these SPACs, if you remember them,
Yeah,
special
there are
purpose
SPACs.
acquisition companies, and
There
we saw an
was.
enormous number of SPACs come out in 2022. 2020 in 2021 we saw the craziness with GameStop. Remember GameStop?
Oh my.
Violated all theories of economics and went to $300 a share. We saw $500 board apes, right? $500,000 cartoon photos, cartoon pictures, right? These NFTs. We saw this NFT craze.
Yeah,
When you're anecdotally, yeah, yeah, and we saw, of course, we saw the SPACs. There was, I think, it was over 1,000 transactions that year. It was actually, when we looked at the number of IPOs per year, 2021 was the highest in 25 years. It was, if you didn't think this was a peak, if you didn't know things were so good at this point, you got to be an idiot. I'll tell you what, we were idiots because Michelle, as your CEO of Paw.com, Paw.com was on fire back then. And Paw.com hit 39 million in sales. It was 3 years in a row we did the Inc. 5000. 3 years in a row. One of the fastest growing companies in America again. And we had two buyers that year, and we were all like, let's just wait till next year. We'll be twice the size. So why would we want to sell at this point?
yeah, we like it
Bad
was
things do
never going to
happen.
end, right?
2022 hit. Yeah, 2022 hit, and we saw a hurricane. We saw a Ukraine war. We saw the tech wreck. We saw 9% inflation. We saw massive increases in interest rates, which are destroying small businesses. We saw e-commerce companies collapse in value. Publicly traded e-commerce companies collapsed by over 90%. We saw a Big change from 2021 to 2022. And we saw the number of IPOs in 2022 dry up. And in 2023, one of the lowest. So think about this. 2021, Michelle, was the highest period of IPOs that we've
Right.
seen in 25 years. 2023 was one of the lowest periods we've seen in 25 years.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, Max, yeah, looking for more
What
commentary there.
volatility, right? Too good to be true. Like it's unnatural. Yeah, that's for sure a sign. And I think that's one of the things that you're dealing with your time to sell index or TTS index.
Yeah, look, everything is, as entrepreneurs, we have this innate ability to be optimistic, right? That's who we are. We're optimistic creatures who believe that things are always going to get better. We're going to keep making money. Things are going to go good. So the idea of the TTSI index or the TTSI score, sorry, time to sell index score, is that it's like this third party coming in and saying, "Hey, look at this metric and make your own decision. Is it?" But if you want to know based on empirical data, and we'll talk about the calculation in a few minutes, but if you want to know based on empirical data, how is it that where are we at right now? Is it a buyer's market, a balanced market, or a seller's market? Currently, the index is 3.6 out of 100. That's how it can't get worse than that. Pretty much are at the ultimate worst period of time to sell a company. And what's the difference between the worst period of time and the best period of time? Let me tell you, the best period of time, people are going to give you multiples based on sales sometimes. I know e-commerce companies were getting one-time sales. I know we sold a company, it got 6.6 times sales based on it was a recurring revenue digital platform. Okay, so it was a little bit different. But it got 6.6 times sales. When you start getting into these worst times to sell your company, it's based on earnings multiples. And when you have high interest rates, the earnings multiples for private equity or cash flow buyers tend to leverage their plays, especially the larger companies, right? But everything rolls down. Don't think it doesn't roll down. It rolls down from IPO to private equity. It rolls all the way downstream, right? To us small business owners who want to sell our businesses. And what happens is we have this sort of lack of demand that takes effect in the marketplace. And the prices drop dramatically. And you're starting to look at more earnings multiples, especially when you got talk about cash flow buyers. The interest rates are for right now, when the interest rates for private equity, let's say it's 10%. Back 3 years ago, it was 5%. Let's just go, it's gone up to 10 now, right? Or 6% 3 years ago. Now it's about 10%. The private equity firms has to go back to their clients and show a huge premium. So they're going to want to make 18, 19, 20% return. So you're now talking about a 5 times earnings on a stable business. If you have growth, of course, you could have a little bit of premium. If you have shrinking, you're going to have a lower valuation than 5, a much lower valuation if it's shrinking. But that's what they have. What we have is a situation where the banks will back these private equity firms with certain loans, and those loans are done at rates that they will make a huge multiple or profit from. They won't do the transaction otherwise. So that's what depresses the marketplace. There's no irrational exuberance, as I think that was Greenspan. He used that in the 90s. There's no irrational exuberance when it comes to the valuations of companies. And because there's no irrational exuberance, you have this sort of effect in the marketplace where it's all based on earnings multiples. And that is the worst place to be in when you're trying to sell your company. It really is. All right. If you're in the audience, you want to come on stage, we'd be happy to hear from you. I know, Marcia, you sold a lot of companies. If you sold a company, we'd love to hear your story. If you have a question for one of us, we'd love to have you come on stage and ask us because it's Friday afternoon and we got a new app going here. It's called Clubhouse. When I say new, it's a whole brand new thing. We interestingly, very small crowds right now, but I'm okay with that because we'll see where it goes with the new changeover of the app. But let us come on stage, join us, and let's have that conversation. Any other thoughts, Michelle, on this TTSI, this time to sell index. It's something that's a little bit unique. I don't know if anyone's ever come out with it, talking about time to sell index for startups.
Yeah, all right. So I'm fixated on this and I'm thinking, like, what are your thoughts on what is what score? What are the signs? I know you're looking at how many IPOs there were against averages, but what makes a good climate for the IPOs to be preferable for to get a good time to sell?
Um, okay, Marcia, apologize. We're trying to get you on stage. The app is really flaky. It's been very flaky for the last 2 days. I think they're doing upgrades. Not certain. Are you on stage now? I got Benjamin. We got Benjamin on stage. I don't know. I'm trying to get
I
you on
don't
stage.
think
I don't know what's going on.
I don't see her on stage.
Yeah, she got her hand up there,
Oh,
but
there she is. She's on
there she
now.
is. All right, so we'll get to Benjamin and Marcia in a minute here, but I did want to talk about this index for a minute here, okay? And I want to explain how we came up with this because this isn't something that I've thought about and just said, "Oh, this is the time to sell." This isn't some call that I have that I'm trying to use empirical data. Okay, I'm trying to look at actual data and come up with a metric just so that when this arrow points into a seller's market, you begin to think, okay, I have a good scenario to sell, favorable terms, and this is an opportunity for me to take that. This is not to say you should sell your company. This is only to say this is the right time to be selling your company. And I said 50% of the valuation comes from the right time to sell your company. We talk about that in the book. All right, so here's how we got the metric. I looked at from 1998 to 2023, and I looked at the peaks and troughs of the number of IPOs per peak and trough. So I actually went trough to peak to make it a little bit more average trough to peak percentage. And so I looked at all those and then I averaged those trough to peaks and I identified a metric. So at the lowest trough, there's an increase of the number of IPOs by 566.97%. Okay. So that's the delta that we're dealing with on the TTSI index. It's this, we're looking at the lowest points of number of IPOs to the highest number of IPOs. And we're saying, okay, we're not going to look at one trough to peak. We're going to look at the average of trough to peaks for the last 25 years. And that's how we're trying to get our data because we don't want to be skewed by, oh, this was extreme or this was that. We don't want to be caught in one particular metric or one past history. We want to look at more history than one. And when we do that, we're able to figure out, okay, so this is the average. And now based on this, so based on the trough of the last, I don't have the number in front of me here now, but it was about, stand by, I don't have it in front of me, but it was about 150 in 2023. So we're looking at that as the trough, and it's looking at about 180 in 2024. So that's where we get that 3.6% out of 100. So we're taking the percentage between the trough and the peak, and we're looking at how well we're doing. So it really is a horrible market to sell your business right now. It's absolutely horrible. Like, this is the market you want to build. This is the market you want to buy, but this is not the market you want to sell. It is not a seller's market whatsoever for startups. Again, there are scenarios where you have no choice but to sell. And so I'm not suggesting that you don't sell just because the timing's wrong. Sometimes people do that. I had a good friend who sold a big company and they sold it, and I think it was the wrong timing. They got a lot lower valuation than they should have gotten, but they sold it last year, and that's it. They sold it at the bottom. But when you do sell at the peak, you experience some pretty cool things. One is strategic buyers are willing to come in the market. See, right now, when you're at the bottom, I'm an employee working for a Fortune 500 company. I'm thinking, do I try to buy this company right now? Or do I sit back and wait till the market to improve? Because if I suggest this to my bosses, I'm going to get fired because this is not the right time to buy. This is the worst time to buy. The interest rates are too high. We can't leverage this, whatever. And so there's a lot of things that go on in the marketplace, but if we just look at the empirical data, if we just look at the number of IPOs from trough to peak,
We've tracked that for the last 25 years. It almost mirrors 100% the market. Now, there is a lag effect here. I want to be clear about this because when the IPOs did collapse, there was about 6 months after that we saw private equity and venture capital deals continue to happen. But the reality is everything flows from the top. It flows from the IPOs down to private equity, down to venture capital, the acquisitions of businesses. Everything flows from IPOs because that's the ultimate end game for most of the market. That's how our world works. That's how liquidity works. It's all about selling the businesses. We sell them, they're consolidated. Ultimately, they go to private equity or they go to venture capital. And then ultimately, these companies go public. There's liquidity, people make a lot of money, everybody's happy. But the reality is, when there's no IPOs, things begin to constrain. And we're now seeing that. By the way, there's also a reverse effect that occurs. As the market improves, IPOs improving, you're not necessarily going to see private equity and venture capital improve. It takes about 6 months after that. There's a bit of a laggard effect. How do I know all this shit? I lived it. I lost $130 million when I was 29 years old. I study this stuff. We sold Hostopia a month before the Lehman crisis. We sold .club 6 months before the tech wreck. Geeks for Less, I sold 2/3 of my shares. I can't take credit for this one because I did not know Putin was going to attack Ukraine. But I sold 2/3 of my shares 6 months before the Ukraine war. Over and over again, we've done deals, transactions here, and we've done them months before when things are good. In the book, I have this really cool graphic of this lady exiting stage left. And I always say that when things are so good, just exit stage left. Marsha, we love having you on stage. We love hearing your stories. And we never really talked a lot about your exits. So I'd love to hear from you a little bit about that.
Good afternoon, Colin. Wow, do I have a story for you today? And you're the first one I'm publicly sharing this with.
Oh, I love that.
But first, I'm going to tell you about some of my exits because as an entrepreneur, I think creatively. And to make things happen, sometimes you have to be creative and you have to think outside of the box. When I sold my sidewalk chalk company on February 9th, 1990, it's like one of the big dates of my life, it was a happy day. But 10 months before I sold to the world's largest toy company, I had been in 9 months of due diligence with the chairman of the Ohio Art Company. That's the company that makes the world famous Etch-a-Sketch. And they were the first company that came wanting to buy my chalk company. And we had our finances audited. We had everything perfectly done. The lawyers and the accountants were ringing up the tally while I was getting everything put into perfect place for this transaction. And at the final day, I'm in the private conference room of the chairman, and he says, Marsha, I'm happy to welcome you aboard. Colin, let me go back one step. The first time I went into Bryan, Ohio to visit their headquarters, this was 1988, so a long time ago. And I had bought a brand new, beautiful suit to wear, and I had on my nylons and my heels and all looking as good as I could look. And they walked me through the executive suites and introducing me to people. And I noticed the only females were behind typewriters. And I just made a mental note. This is an old boys club, but you know what? I can work in this. Then I got introduced to one of the top guys in the finance department. Now, Colin, you and I have not met yet, but we will. I am 5'9", so with my heels on, I'm pushing 6 feet, and I'm thin, and really thin back then.
Okay,
And
I'm
this,
fat and short. Like, can you see Danny DeVito? That's pretty much me.
okay, I'll be the other. I'll be your twin. This guy looks at me. He looks from my head to my feet, and then his eyes go back up to my head, and then he turns over to the man who introduced us and said, "She can't look like this and have a brain too."
That's horrible.
And it about takes the wind out of your sails. So then now we're Remember, I already know this is a sexist old men's club, but back then we didn't talk in those kind of terms. I knew their checks would cash and they were a good, solid company and they were a recognized brand in my category. So I'm in the chairman's office and he says, Marcia, we want to go ahead and do the deal. Here's what I propose. First of all, you're going to move to Bryan, Ohio and brand manage your product line. Now, I had started and headed this company, and I lived in Boulder County, Colorado, which is the most magnificent place you can imagine. And I'm supposed to move to Bryan, Ohio. But I didn't say, I just listened. And he said, and we'll pay you $42,000 a year. And I had my CPA pull their annual reports. I knew he was making 580,000 and he had a 400 and some thousand bonus. He was making almost $1 million. He never invented anything. He never loaded a semi. He just happened to be a member of the Lucky Sperm Club. He was his father's son. So he is offering me $42,000. And I said, Bill, in all due respect, I pay my plant managers more than that. He said, yes, Marcia, but you would be the highest paid woman in Bryan, Ohio. Strike two. So then he said, I'm going to propose that we join our companies in October, which was that month, and then we'll go to Toy Fair in February. That's our big annual event in New York. And we'll sit down in June following Toy Fair and negotiate the price. I said, Bill, it sounds like you want to sleep together before our companies are married. And I'm not in favor of that. So I think oh no, Marcia, I didn't mean anything sexual. I knew he didn't. And we joke about this now because we were very good friends. But at any rate, I said, Bill, you have my audited financials. You can see where my profit margins are. You can see our customer base. There's no surprises here. So there's no need to postpone agreeing on a price for such a long time. And I said, it's clear to me we are not going to get a deal done, but let's remain friends because you guys are good people. And they were, and they are, and we have been dear friends to this day. So I get on the airplane to go home, and I think I cried half the way back to Colorado. My company was growing so fast. I needed someone to take over with deeper cash pockets than I had because I knew I was going to bankrupt the company if I didn't find a home. Back then, bankers didn't take a mom with two kids very seriously when I went to try to get funding for the company. At any rate, the deal fell apart. I survived. I go into my office and literally, Colin, about 8 or 9 days later, I get a call from Gary McCoy, who was my toy rep in Dallas. And he said, hi, Sunshine, how you doing today? And I said, great, Gary, how are you? And of course, you never let your sales reps know if your company's going to be switching hands. So I had not said anything to anyone. And he said, have you ever thought about selling your company? And I said, why would you ask? He said, I've got a company who's wanting one just like yours. You distribute to everybody. Back then, we were vendors of record, back to brick and mortar days. All that was in place. We had perfect shipping records, so we didn't have any dings in our history. And I said, yeah, I'd be interested in talking to them. And he said, you call so-and-so. And I said, Gary, if they're interested, you have them call me. Because I had just been through 9 months of jumping through hoops to go nowhere. And so 45 minutes later, I get a call from the chairman of the world's largest toy company. And we had our deal done in 3.5 weeks, the day before Toy Fair 1990, because I had everything in place. All the work I had done for Ohio Art had instantly been put back to use with them. And so that was how I sold. And then when I sold the company, it was an interesting transaction. I granted them a worldwide right to license our formula. So we got paid royalties on all the chalk they made. I sold the equipment, I sold the factory, I sold the hard assets, and I had to do a 2-year golden handcuff with them. So it was so they did great with chalk. I got beautiful royalty checks. And then we put Power Rangers into that distribution system. That's why they bought my company. They wanted to flood the US with Power Rangers, and we did. Once Power Rangers took off, in about 5 years, my contract had a clause that if the royalties fell below $50,000 a month, the rights reverted back to me. So that happened. And I actually then relicensed the rights to Pumpkin Masters, which makes the pumpkin carving kits. They were a fall seasonal item, and we're happy to have a spring summer item to balance out their business. To your listeners, always be willing to think creatively. There's so many ways to skin a cat. The next product that I took global was my gel-filled
Before
wrist
Michelle,
rest.
before you move
Oh,
on, like I feel like you were so much in control of all the aspects of that sale. So the sale I talked about losing $130 million, I totally screwed up. I'm 29 years old, blah blah blah. But you seem to just understand, like you seem to be so in control. Were you actually that in control when you were going through it of
uh,
everything?
probably a nervous wreck. I knew my numbers, and it's so important that your people know their numbers. I knew my numbers, and I knew what my numbers were worth. I had a little kitchen cabinet. I didn't have an advisory board or a board of directors. I called them my kitchen cabinet, and that was my banker, my lawyer, and my CPA. And they were pivotal in helping me think through all of this. So, yes and no to your answer. I tried to, what I wanted was to get a deal done. I didn't want a deal to die. And so I was willing to be a little flexible. I wanted the deal done.
You have a lot of tenacity, and I think you were a forerunner there, the way that you took on this business and you found a buyer. For us, one thing that we always try to do and we say is not all buyers or investors are created equal. Like, you really do want to get in there and choose who it is you want to work with. As you said, I've been part of acquisitions where it was horrible. The culture was so misaligned and things were not communicated properly to the leaders of the business being acquired, and vice versa. So there are good ways to do it. For me, I think always putting people first, even if they're not able to keep their job, but really having still the vision and the strategy in terms of how they're going to work inside the company before, as you say, before that transaction happens is critically important. I fear to know how many acquisitions fail just because companies don't take that extra time to get to
Mhm.
know each other and find the right fit. For us, club, we were looking for a strategic fit.
Actually, to your point, these companies both approached me. I didn't go out looking for a buyer, they came to me. So I was lucky in that regard. And then with my gel filled wrist rest, when that I was ready to take that out, I knew I didn't have contacts in the electronics and office industry. So I granted a worldwide license to Case Logic, and they took it worldwide. So I didn't quote sell the company, I licensed the rights. And I love getting royalty checks every month. I call that my mailbox money. And it's the easiest money you ever earn after working so hard to build factories and do all the other. But the thing I'm so excited to share with all of you just happened on Tuesday of this week.
Oh, that
I
sounds fun.
All right, we're
okay,
waiting.
put your
Drum
seatbelt,
roll.
put your seatbelt on. This is a big
Okay.
one. 8 years ago, I started a company called Staywell Copper, and we manufacture antimicrobial copper that kills germs on the germy things you touch all the time, like your cell phones and your car keys. And it went out of the chute really hot, and then on Amazon. And I made every Amazon mistake any dummy can because I'm older than dinosaurs and I'd never even bought much on Amazon, much less sold on it. So we got up getting close to 150, 170, 80,000 a month in sales, and all of a sudden Amazon delists us. It took 2.5 years and 8 agencies to get the product back on Amazon. Anyway, so it's been a slow grind rebuilding our company. And 4 years ago, Kevin Harrington's company called me. Kevin Harrington was the original shark on Shark Tank and the inventor of the infomercial. And they wanted me to pay Kevin a pretty big sum of money to do an infomercial and then buy rights on his TV time to promote Stay. And I said, I'm interested, but now's not the time. Keep me in your loop. And I sent them samples down to their offices in Florida. 2 years ago, they called again. Same deal. Still not interested. 2.5 weeks ago, they called again. And I thought, oh, I know what this is going to be about. But I answered the phone, talked to a young guy. We did about over an hour Zoom call. And he said they were having a shark retreat in Las Vegas. And they wanted me to come in and pitch my product to Kevin and his group. And I said, interesting. How many companies will be there? And I'm thinking 50, 70, 100. And I don't really want to be in that kind of a cattle car. It's just too overwhelming. And he said, we are inviting 9 companies. And I said, I'm in. So on Tuesday, Monday night, I got to Vegas. Tuesday morning at 8:30, I joined them in their meeting room. There were 8 other companies. It was the most fascinating day. They did a presentation, and then each of the 9 of us had a timed 10-minute slot to pitch our product. Then they did another hour presentation. Then each of the 9 of us had another 10 minutes to tell the group what our biggest pain points and obstacles were to see if we could do some group problem solving. Then they did another presentation. Then they said, we're going to call you back into a private room one at a time. There will be 3 of us and you, and we're going to do final discussions. And the first one we want to call back is Marcia Reese. I went back first. They closed the door and they said, we want to partner with you. You're our number 1 choice. As of Tuesday, and then the next day on the drive back from Vegas, I started getting deal points faxed through or texted through. The contract will get signed today. We are going to be partnering with Kevin Harrington, and his team is going to be taking Staywell Copper into a whole new realm. And I am so thrilled and so excited that I get to tell you first.
That is exciting, and maybe we can get Kevin on the show to talk about that, because I think look, you're amazing, Marcia. I mean, you just don't give up. You don't stop. I don't think you can stop.
I don't either. I don't want to. This is what keeps me young, Colin. I'll get old and gray if I stop. Oh, I'm already gray, but I'll get old.
We gotta send you an invite for our Christmas party or holiday party. Sorry, but we have to send you an invite. We do this. We're doing James Bond this year, shaken not stirred, and we do it every year. This year's December 14th, and we invite 150 guests to my home. It's the Intercoastal, and it's the end of the boat parade, and there's like 1 million people watch the show. And this year we have a very cool DJ who's going to join us. It's filming it. We do a charity for Ukraine. It's really an incredible event. Got to get you an invite to that. And I'd love to host you. And we have Airbnbs in Fort Lauderdale too. We can put you up for no charge as well.
Awesome. You count me in. And I make the most fabulous Marcia-tini you have ever had. It's a custom martini I created, and it's fabulous. And don't drink more than 2, or you'll be flat out. It's really good, and I'll make it for you.
Okay. Why is the team getting so excited here? What's going on here?
I don't know. We're so excited. We're going to get to meet Marcia, but I'm so excited for you, Marcia. I love that story.
Well, I also want to let you know, I can introduce any of you guys who have a product you want them to take a look at. Reach out to Colin. He knows how to reach me, and I'll make sure you at least get the Zoom interview to see whether or not they'll invite you to come to their next product selection, because he's got a way bigger reach and reputation than I do, and I am thrilled, and I'll keep you all posted how this all goes. I have a girlfriend, Linda Clark. She actually appeared on Shark Tank, and Lori Grenier bought her into her company called Simply Fit. And in 18 months, they took it to $153 million. Now, Kevin thinks it'll be $100 million within 3 years. We'll see. I'll keep you all posted.
I don't know, but I do know Kyle loves your products. Kyle was talking about it. Oh, they look really good.
They're fabulous. And I haven't had a cold, no COVID, no jab in the arm. I have not had a cold since 2016 because this stuff keeps me healthy. So anyway, I'm happy to help any of your listeners who want to get their product in front of Kevin. I can at least get you to step one. And the funny thing is, they didn't tell us what to bring in. They didn't tell us, they wouldn't give us any breakdown of how the day was going to roll. We just had to be up ready to go spontaneously.
Well, that's amazing, Marcia. Every time you tell a story, it's just that you're so good at it. You're like the way you describe the actual moments in time. I learned from you, and I have to sharpen my game because I'm not at your level yet. I'm going to work on that. Okay.
Oh
All
my
right.
gosh, Colin, we got to do something together sometime because
We do.
it never ends. My brain just doesn't turn off. It
Yeah, you
doesn't
and
turn
I.
off.
Chapter 57 in the book, by the way. You might want to read that one chapter. Diversity, neurodiversity. 49% of entrepreneurs have mental challenges. I'm serious, by the way. It actually is a serious topic, but I do believe that as entrepreneurs, we need to understand the mental challenges of entrepreneurship as well. All right, we do have Benjamin on the stage, and we're running out of time, but Marshall, thank you very much. Benjamin, we would love to hear from you. If you have a question for Marcia or Michelle or myself or Mimi or Kyle, we'd love to hear from you. Or if you have a story about your exit, your sale, we'd love to hear from you. Coming a little fuzzy. You're coming in a little bit fuzzy on the microphone. I don't know if you can get closer to the microphone there. Try again. We're hearing a lot of clicking and clacking there, but we'll give you a minute here just to get your microphone worked out there.
Can you hear me
Michelle,
now?
I thought that oh, yeah, hit perfectly.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Benjamin. I'm speaking from Nigeria. I've not actually sold any company yet. I've not actually exited from any company. I'm safe in the industry. So I'm actually calling on because I have questions that I would love to ask. I just finished incorporation of my company in the US, though I'm based in Nigeria. Still at the phase where, like as a new entrepreneur, as an entrepreneur who is new in the industry without much experience, you do face challenges of where to start, how to get about getting hosts for your business and all that. I'm still at this phase where I have confusion where to start, where to get things done and all that. So I think I actually love this show. So I'll be coming on once in a while to get to learn more from all of you here. Since you guys have been in the industry for a long time.
We're talking about how do you get started and how do you get help in the United States, in Canada, most places around the world. I don't know about Nigeria, but there are a lot of incubators are out there. But it takes a village to raise a startup. And I know I'm quoting a past politician, but I actually truly believe that it takes a village to raise a startup. That it's a community like Clubhouse, it's a community like Startup Club, it's a community like the one at Allen NSU. It's the incubator in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, that we run here, a 5,200 square foot facility with 15 or 20 companies who come together and they help each other out. It really is amazing to see the way that you can do that. You can help each other out. We had the opportunity on this show to interview Bridget Weston, and if you have a chance to go back and listen to that episode, it was Startup Club Bridget Weston SCORE. She is the CEO of SCORE, 10,000 volunteers, backed by the SBA, and they make a claim here. This is the government now. It's pretty credible. They are making a claim that you can increase your chances of success, Benjamin, by 3 times by getting a mentor. And it doesn't cost you a thing. It doesn't cost you a thing to get a SCORE mentor. It doesn't cost you a thing to get into the Incubate program at the Allen Levant Center in South Florida. It doesn't cost you a thing to get into some of these incubators. I don't know the ecosystem of startups in Nigeria, but I do know that there are people who want to help you. Everyone wants to help you. Look at Marcia. She says, "Oh, if anybody wants to get their product in front of Kevin Harrington, let me know." If you're not listening to the show, you wouldn't know that. If you're not on Clubhouse, you wouldn't know that. There are people out there who want to help you. They want to make you successful, and that's how we're going to all benefit from this. And by the way, the book Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat, the same thing. Marcia, her story is talked about in that book. She's actually one of the people we profiled. We interviewed 200 people for the book, and only 50 made the actual final cut for the book, and she was in the book. And we actually talk about her about 2 or 3 times in the book. So, especially in the early sections, Marcia, you are truly an inspiration for new entrepreneurs. Our number one segment, we've sold 30,000 copies so far in the first year here. It's been number one 15 categories on Amazon, won 13 awards. But you know what our number one segment is? 18 to 34-year-olds, women, and it's about 50-50 now, which I find is fascinating. I find that's great. Because early when we first launched it, it was like male dominated. And then as the word got out, more and more young women were buying the book as well. So you are such an inspiration to young women, to young men, to anyone who wants to start a business.
Thank you, Colin. I humbly am honored to hear you say that. Running my little companies has been the joy of my lifetime. When I was in a Toys R Us store some years ago, walking up and down the aisle, looking at packaging and trends, and I always look at what's in the closeout aisle because that tells me what didn't work. And I hear this little person say, "Mommy, if you buy me this, it's all I want all day." And I thought, wow, look what that kid wants. And she's in a Toys R Us store. She can have anything in the world. And I walk down the aisle, I see her, she's holding my bucket of sidewalk chalk. And Colin, that's what drives entrepreneurs to know I was all that little girl, my product was all that little girl wanted all day. You couldn't have given me a check that would have made me happier.
Isn't it true? It's not about the money all the time.
No.
And a lot of entrepreneurs who sell their businesses and they sell for a lot of money, and then they do this exit, and then they have this identity problem. They run into issues with who am I? I'm not doing anything anymore, and it's not good because your identity is not one business. Marcia, you are not just the founder of Sidewalk Chuck. You're an entrepreneur. You're someone who does it over and over again. Your message is bigger than just that one company. And I love that. And I think that we as entrepreneurs need to understand that, and we need to sharpen that sword. We need to hone what we do. We need to make this trade called entrepreneurship, and we need to become better and better at it. That's what we did in the book, Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat. That's what we do on the show. That's what you've shared with us, Marcia, because we've all learned from you today. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're so welcome. And Colin, I have just adored your book. I've shared it with a couple of people, and I'm going to be sharing it with the Shark Retreat, the Harrington folks. So they're going to all know about your book. But it's interesting because with each opportunity, when I sold my chalk, I had to work with that company for 2 years. When I licensed the wrist dress to Case Logic, I had nothing more to do with it. And it was very hard for me to walk away from my baby. And with the deal I did with Kevin Harrington, I will still be involved. And before we went to Las Vegas, my husband said, Marcia, what if he just gives you a check and says, here it is, my company, you go away. Are you ready to walk away from Staywell? And I said, oh, I don't think I am. I have a great big birthday, the 24th of October. It's one of the big ones. And I keep thinking, if I didn't have this wonderful company, I don't like playing tennis. I don't like playing pickleball. I hate playing golf. What the heck would I do? This is who I am. And I want to be able to do it until I die. So I was thrilled that they didn't. That wasn't what transpired. I'll still get to be part of watching them work their magic. And I'll be learning a whole new set of tricks and techniques from these people who do it at a different level than I ever have.
You're truly an iconic entrepreneur in America, and your story has not been told yet. And I don't feel like it's gotten out there. I'm not talking about the story of selling one company. I'm talking about the story of Marcia Reese. We do touch upon it in the book. We are out of time, though. This has been an incredible example of how the community can come together. I am happy, by the way, Marcia and Benjamin and Kyle and Mimi and Michelle, to see that the app is now defaulting to live rooms again. It seems like the Clubhouse app is coming back, and it was starting to have the feature that used to feature this asynchronous chat for the last year, and to find a live room was almost impossible. But now it looks like they're making some huge improvements. If you're listening to this in podcast, for the first time, I can say this in a year, you can actually go to Clubhouse and at Friday at 2 o'clock or 1:58 or whatever, and you can see our room, and you can now join our room. But you'll need to join the Startup Club. You got to go into the Clubhouse app and join Startup Club. And if you haven't already done so, go to the website, sign up to startup.club. We have a phenomenal team with Mimi and another gentleman named Kelsey who's joined the team, who helps prepare the monthly publication that we produce. We also have booked, Mimi, I think you booked like 9 speakers now for the next 6, 8, 9 weeks. Is that correct, Mimi?
Yes, we have a lot of really great, exciting speakers coming up.
Yeah, so if you want to know who they are, and all of them are authors or successful serial entrepreneurs, we've had billionaires on the show. We've had the founder of Reebok, Jeffrey Moore, who wrote Crossing the Castle. We've had just incredible people on the show. And we've got another lineup of another 9 or 10 entrepreneurs that are joining the show, and we're going to interview over the next 6, I guess, the next 3 months. I think we're sold out I think all the shows are booked until January now. So, and if you did want to speak on our show, if you have an expertise, please apply. Like, we love it when we can apply. Like, Marsha came on. I love her episode. I think that was one of the best episodes we've done on this year. But she came on and she gave us, oh my gosh, she gave us such a great talk about her past and her history. And you learn a lot. We learn a lot from listening. And by the way, this is not a master class. But of course, this is a master class. But you're not paying thousands of dollars for it. It's free, because that's what Marsha wants. Marsha, Michelle, myself, Mimi, Kyle, we all want to give back. We want to help the community. We want to help you become a successful entrepreneur, launch your startup, and make $1 million, make millions of dollars. But also do one thing more important than that: change the world. Thank you very much. We'll see you all next Friday, 2 o'clock.